Architect Fabian Tan's approach to design has been one that involves evolution and flexibility. He believes that the essence and consistency of a space is a whole that reflects its constituent parts, such as light, material, volume, and relationships. In these hectic and overly complicated times we exist in, restraint and refinement serve as his guiding philosophy to create spaces of subtle beauty. He will be joining us today through Zoom due to some unforeseen circumstances, but don't worry, he can still hear us, so please give him a round of applause.
Hi. Can everybody hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, all good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being there in my physical presence because I think maybe some of you might know I have a close encounter with the sea kind. And so for your safety, I have to quarantine myself. But all thanks to Pam and the crew and the Pam team, Dr. Tan, Victor, and the Pam crew who has worked so hard and beyond to make this still possible for me to share my works with you. And to also all the distinguished speakers, I would love to meet you guys, but I can't. So I apologize for that as well to the attendees and also to my wonderful team who's been there for me. So I'll get straight into it and dive straight into the show because the show must go on. Basically, we are Fabian Tan Architect. We're a small architectural firm in Kuala Lumpur, and we do unique residential designs. And we are going about 9 years strong now, and so we're still going okay. But before I share my works, I'd like to go back to before the formation of Fabian Tan Architect, or short form for FTA. Basically, back then, when I was working for others, I had the innate desire to express myself. And what I did was actually to do art as a hobby. So art is a sort of expression that I needed to do and also to explore about, to find out more about myself. So the first piece of art piece that I did was featured in Petronas Gallery, and as you can see from here. And basically it's an art piece called Corner Art. And it's supposed to hug a lonely corner, because I always feel that art is represented in a flat plain wall. So I decided to choose that lonely corner to feature my artworks. So now when the artwork has a play on words, and basically part of the word or the whole parts of the word actually has a relationship to the actual artwork itself. As you can see from here, the whole word is a female part, but the actual image is and part of the word is related to men. So this also continues on with the ambiguity of male and female in this instance. So from the creation of my art pieces, it led me to do more artworks like furniture, sculpture, small art pieces, light fittings, and things like that. And there is a common thread between all my artworks, which is this form of ambiguity, of something that is not really that obvious, that is not so straightforward. And I asked myself this question, that if I could express myself in art, why couldn't I express myself in architecture? So that led me to my first project. Now relax, guys. This is not my first project, but this is an actual image of what my first client wanted me to do. So she showed me an image, something along the lines of this, and she asked me and told me that she wanted a Balinese-inspired house. Of course, from that, I had a little bit of an identity crisis. And mean by identity crisis like is, and I think a lot of architects can relate to this too. Do you actually follow what your client wants you to do, or do you express yourself in the best possible manner? So being as any young architect would do, I would take inspiration from travels. So having just got back from Japan back then, I was quite fascinated with this concept of the engawa, which is a lifted deck that sits between the outside and the inside of the house. Now, this deck is a very simple concept, but it has many layers of transition between it. And these layers also forms kind of the beginning of the concept of what I want to represent about the house in terms of its complexity. It is very complex, but it is also very simple at the same time. So you would say it's a kind of like a complex simplicity that's attached to this kind of spaces. And that's the first house is the 𝗗𝗠 House. And the 𝗗𝗠 House was originally a 1.5-story house. And it has many rooms in the middle. And this makes the middle part of the house quite dark because of the rooms. But finally, I managed to convince the client to get out of that Balinese inspired mold. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to do a more modern interpretation of the house. And one of probably the main features of the house was this monster door, or this red monster door in front of the house. And this also is related to the client's requirements, because the clients love to collect Chinese antiquities. And so this red monster door pays homage to large red temple doors. So this has that kind of feeling. But if you see from here and this image, you would see that the door appears to be solid, but it is made from many tiny little metal slats that has a translucent panel behind it. And when you do open that translucent panel, because of the light difference between the outside and the inside, you would get a ventilation flow through it. And on the left-hand side, you will see that there's this kind of I would say a 3D sculptural grille window. And this is the picture when it's fully open. And this 3D sculptural window grille is a combination of a grille and a window at the same time, which I created back then. So the house in the section is a linear open concept. If you can see from the living, dining, and kitchen area. And if you notice, the living area is slightly lifted so that it has that invisible transition between the first floor and also the ground floor. And that is the image of the view towards the first floor. So you get that transition. Although it's slightly lifted, it does make a lot of difference. The height of the actual slab on the top is the same height as a table level, which I'll show you later. And in houses, there usually in terrace houses, you will get light sources from the front and the rear. And this is not a new concept of the courtyard. The courtyard has been embraced even in Malacca shop houses, where they bring the light in the middle of the house through some form of skylight or a opening, or in this instance, a tiny little courtyard. So this image is the kitchen, between the kitchen and the dining courtyard. And moving up to the staircase, you're confronted by these shelves that houses the owner's Chinese basket collections, and the exposed rafters with light slits on the top to bring more light into the space. So as I've just mentioned just now, on the left-hand side, you see it's a computer table. It's just a table, or you can use it as a computer table and a reading table, and the level difference that's associated with it. And you can also take a couple of steps, step ladders, to go up into this little patch of green that views the surroundings. And this is from the master bedroom looking down towards the kitchen. And you can see from ahead, there's also this interlacing kind of creation where you can open up for, you open 6 inches towards the right hand side and you would have a full ventilation, but also privacy and security at the same time. And the bathroom that opens up into the courtyard. And I like to play around with angles and views. And in this instance, if you're doing your private business, because of the view angle, the people on the ground floor won't be able to see you. But it feels very open at the same time. And the view from the back with the overlapping concrete tiangs to give it privacy. Most of the concept of this house was not to have any curtains. So some of the concrete tiangs are overlapped for ventilation, but some of it are open for views and more light. Okay, now we move on to the next statement, which is a statement that most architects are familiar with. And this statement is called form follows function. It's been repeated many, many times. It's been created by Louis Sullivan, an American architect, during the Industrial Revolution. But I don't really get this statement, because to me, function can be interpreted in a million configurations. So you would say that this statement is kind of like an oxymoron. And to prove my case, maybe perhaps I will look at I will reference one of my favorite architects. This is Antonio Gaudí. And this building that you see is an apartment building in Barcelona called Casa Batlló. And an interesting concept about Casa Batlló is this courtyard. And if you notice the image clearly, you will see there's dark tiles, the dark blue tiles at the top. And as it goes down towards the ground floor, it becomes lighter. There's a gradation to it. Also, notice the windows at the top level increases as it goes towards the bottom. Now, the reason behind this, or the intention behind it, was to have light equally at each level. Now, for Gaudí to think of that concept at that time was maybe genius, maybe silly, maybe cliche, but that's not the real point here. The real point is there was a certain intention behind it. So instead of the statement of form follows function, it should be reinterpreted to form follows intention, which draws me to the next house, which is the 𝗗𝗯 House. And in the 𝗗𝗯 House, you can notice the main feature of the 𝗗𝗯 House is the Revolving Door. Now, the Revolving Door is a large revolving door. And it's a very interesting story about this house. Originally, during our construction drawings were actually this actual living space here that you see is actually square shaped. So I thought of this idea in the middle of a construction stage. So I actually presented this idea. I had this idea and I said I got very excited about it, and I presented this idea to my client. And my client first response to me is, "Are you crazy?" Then in response, I said no. And he said, have you done this before? And answer is no. And has anybody ever done this before? And the answer is also no. So but it took me a lot of convincing to get the client to follow my idea. And when the extent of my convincing was so much that I actually brought the client to a basketball court in which I drew a chalk drawing on the actual basketball court, 1-to-1 scale, showing where the furniture is and how the thing will operate and things like that. And much convincing that the clients actually bought the idea. But there is a strong intention behind the revolving door. And And there's sort of like a mathematics behind it. If you would notice a circle, just imagine a circle has divided into 3 parts. So you would have 120 degrees each. But if those 2 parts overlap into a single part of, you would get an opening of about 240 degrees. So this 240 degrees is more than the periphery of your eye, which is around 180 degrees. So in other words, the intention was to make the living room feel connected to the garden almost so openly that the actual space of the inside of the building is already the outside and the outside is inside. And this is represented through that opening. Picture of the revolving door fully open, and also the beautiful umbrella tree that's beyond. A view inside, outside, and open. And there's also a very strong intention behind the timber slats and also the panel that you see that's open inside. The timber slabs is meant to cut down glare, but also provide security at the same time. And if you see the panels that are openable, they're openable for the obvious reasons for ventilation, but I also believe that it's also open not only at the bottom panel but at the top panel for glass cleaning. The Bola house at night, lighting up like a lantern. And yes, we'll move on to the next one. And with normal terrace house typology, usually it's a 2-story house. So you will have the car porch and the living areas on the ground floor. And usually the dining in the dry kitchen or the kitchen area is quite dark in the middle. And then you will move up this series of staircase. Once you come up to this staircase, you will reach to this kind of like a family area, you would say. And this family area is actually not required, but it's there for a reason. It's there to connect the bedrooms together. So the master bedroom in the front and also the two bedrooms at the back. And you hold on to the idea of the family area, which I'll explain to you next. So that is the I've thought about the terrace house typology in that manner, and I thought that why does the terrace house typology have to stay the same all the time? And what happens is I actually reverse the typology. As in, like, I put the bedrooms on the ground floor and the living areas at the top floor. And the corridor that connects to all of it can be double volume. Now, this can only be achieved if you flipped it the other way around, because the living spaces on the top floor, or the living spaces of the living, dining, and kitchen can be open space, and it can be all as one, which I'll explain later. But I'm very proud of this layout, because as you can see from here, it has almost treat the corridor as though it's the outside area. And if you can see from this typical floor plan, it has 4 bedrooms with 4 ensuite bathrooms, and all the bathrooms are naturally ventilated by air wells. Yeah, I'm quite proud of it. And also the requirements of the clients require that they have a lot of bedrooms, because they have a lot of visitors that visit regularly. The top level with the living spaces and the rooftop garden deck with the dining and the open living. From the outside, the 𝗗𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 house looks very normal, like a 2-story house. But as you go in, my client describes to me when there are visitors that go in, they get a bit disorientated, because it looks nothing like a 2-story house. As you can see from here, the corridor, which is double volume, with a slit of light above to light up the entire space. So it's as though the bedrooms are the inside of the house and outside of the bedrooms are outside. A view to the back. from the entrance area, and on the right, on the left-hand side, you can see the bedrooms. It's also a very funny story behind this large door, which I put at the end of the corridor. Clients got very excited about this. They said to me, can I have a feature door? Like, can we clad it with timber, or can we like have some kind of color texture just for it to stand out? Then I told him the door is actually not the feature in the house. And he said, what is? I said, the architecture is the feature. So I managed to convince him out of going with that idea, and he agreed with me that we should go with that way. So the large door at the end also has openings, and I'm quite cheeky sometimes. So if you can see from this, some people have asked me, how do you open the small little panel door at the top? I also wonder sometimes. And this is the opening towards the tree at the back, to give more light ventilation to the space whilst remaining secure. And I like the architecture. We like architecture that has modes to it almost. So in this case, the sliding doors to the bedrooms have different modes to it. You can open the little window at the top to get ventilation at night, and you close it. Or you can also open the actual sliding door, which the clients mostly do that because most of the time they don't have visitors, or they rarely have visitors. But if they have visitors, then they will close it. But most of the time, throughout the day, it's always open. So it feels like one with the actual space. And this is another example of modes. You have the sliding door, a dresser that becomes a corner, that becomes a dresser, that opens up, becomes a dresser, and a building. The actual bedroom that has the bathroom that was telling you just now, and this door can be fully opened because the door actually is in a position where when you open it, it blocks the toilet, which is the most undesirable thing that you want to see in the toilet. But the rest of it is okay. So the glass panels are fine with this to let light through, also ventilation. From the bathroom, if you peek over on the far right of this, you can actually see your neighbor brushing their teeth. We talk about context as architects. Usual context from architecture is usually within the building to its surrounding environment, as in like where the sun direction is, where the views are, where levels and things like that. But I don't view that in such technical terms, because I think there's a context within a context inside the house, as in like relationships of objects with other objects, and also the relationship between them and human beings as well, light, volume, depth. Those are is what we find important. This is a staircase going up to the first floor. And this is the view from the dining room, looking towards the living. And it makes quite a common sense to have your living room on the first floor. Now, reason being, usual living rooms, when you look out, you see your car porch or your cars. But in these instances where it's on the actual first floor, and you have a garden in front of you, it kind of provides privacy, but it also is quite secure because you're not too scared that somebody will jump into your house because it's on the first floor. So I think that sometimes the reversal of the topology does make certain common sense. And the view towards the rear side. And the overall relationship of the void and the above, and the study area overlooking the double volume. So in another interesting story about the 𝗗𝗓𝗧𝗨𝗠 is the actual light that comes into the space. The client has once told us that sometimes in the morning, the actual light of the house is blue color, towards the midday, it becomes very intense yellow, and towards the later evening, it becomes more orangey. And towards the late evenings, late evenings, it becomes bluish, purplish. And it's a very interesting concept that he said that he can actually tell the time without actually having to look at the watch or even to go outside. He can tell the time just by the color of their house. Okay, we're moving on to a next concept, which is tree is a tree. Now, this was coined by 𝗗𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗠, but also related to non-referential concepts by Valerio Olgiati. So, what do we mean by a tree is a tree? Now, if you experience a tree, you don't experience a tree for its parts. Let's say you don't say there's a nice leaf, or there's a nice twig, or there's a nice branch, or even there's a nice trunk, or even there's a nice root. You experience the tree as a whole, as just as is a whole to a part, or part of the whole. Those are the same things. So this concept took me a while to understand it, but I think it's a concept that can only be understood by experience and not by actual visual imagery, by actually you being in the space itself and being present. Which goes on to the next house, which is the 𝗗𝗧𝗧𝗨𝗠 House. And the 𝗗𝗧𝗧𝗨𝗠 House is originally a single story dilapidated house, which has not been renovated since the 70s. I think since it was originally there. And it was based on the client's requirements of being close to his beloved grandmother, which has passed away. And his beloved grandmother would always sit on the dining room, and it's very close to nature, and always looked out to the garden. And she had very green fingers, and she loves to be very close to nature. And so he wanted to have that kind of feeling to the house. So this is the front of the 𝗗𝗧𝗧𝗨𝗠 House. So the 𝗗𝗧𝗧𝗨𝗠 House has a linear open concept, and on the other side is the bedrooms, and also the first floor here, and the roof deck above. And you can see almost there's some trees and some plants in the house, which gives a reminder of nature being in the presence of the house. So whenever you are in the space, you are always quite close to nature. You feel nature in your presence, and that's what we try to achieve in the 𝗗𝗧𝗧𝗨𝗠 House. And it's almost like a concept of framing nature, of framing spaces, of framing space in that way. Yes. This is the ground floor, open space, looking towards the back. And if you can see from this existing photo of the existing house, you will see that there's a water tank slab above here. And we converted that into a loft deck area. We used the slab and also built a roof above it. And the intangibles of architecture is always there, I feel. We try not to look at architecture in terms of its hardness of it or the obvious tonnage of it. As in, like, we try. Usually, architecture is described by materiality, by walls, the things that we look at every day. But I always like to look at architecture on the reverse side of it, as in like the voids, the actual space, the proportion, the light, and the volume. So sometimes people say white is very boring, but I don't feel white is very boring because white is defined by a certain light. So in certain circumstances like this image, you see like there's different gradations of gray that's formed by light and shadow. This is the kitchen looking towards the backyard. But this is not really a backyard because I always feel like in normal houses, the rear part of the house is usually the lap area, all your clothes and everything. So we tried to cleverly hide those things behind a sliding door, and this is where the washing machine and the lumps of things is behind here. And we try to keep this as a courtyard and with some nature attached to it, so that you can open up to the area. The master bedroom with the framing of a bonsai. This is the back lane, so the client didn't want to have too much of big windows and curtains, because of privacy. The framing of nature is not excluded to plants. It can also be framing of the sky. It's the loft area. And if you take a couple of steps on the left-hand side, you reach a series of staircase. And that will lead you up to the rooftop deck. And the rooftop deck is not high. It's not. It's quite low, and there's an intention behind it so that on the street level there's some form of a privacy if you have people there, and the skylight also doubles up as a table. And this is the picture in full party mode. The client complained that a year later, the neighbor 2 doors away decided to build 2 stories and block his view. But when life gives you lemons, you have to make gin and tonic with a twist, I guess. Okay, this is the 𝗗𝗓𝗧𝗨𝗠 house. And the 𝗗𝗓𝗧𝗨𝗠 house is originally a 2-story terrace house. And the clients were for this particular project was very interesting because they were quite happy with the actual layout and the size of the house. So I had this idea of how would I actually, and they also said that they wanted an extension. So I took this word extension and tried to break it down into what I could do with it. What do you actually mean by extension when you're quite happy with the space already? Is it because people just say extension because they just want to make the space larger or what? Right? So this was quite an interesting concept. But so we employed this kind of an extension by actually extending the boundaries of the architecture forward. In this case, the car porch and the actual middle portion of the house, which becomes the entrance, and also where the shoe cabinet is. Extensions are not limited to the architecture itself. It might also mean horizontal extensions. Not only horizontal extensions, but vertical extensions. So as you can see here, the obvious one is the tree that vertically extends up towards the sky through the architecture. The entrance space, and you can see from here the tree, the entrance space leading to a walkway with 2 courtyards at the side. And then this concept of grills is quite intriguing. Very, very normal concept where you have grills that are directly right in front of the actual sliding door in most houses. And I find this concept quite interesting because no matter what your design for that grill is, if you open a sliding door, it always feels as though you're enclosed, no matter what the design is. It could be horizontal, vertical, whatever. I guess it's because of the proximity of the grills to and the reason that if while you're still opening the sliding door, you can't get out from that space. So we tried to change that by pushing out the grill, pushing out that space, So when you push out that space, you would claim almost the garden space and the courtyards, so that it becomes an extended living space. So view of the courtyard. Another view looking towards the courtyard to the middle walkway. This is a picture of the existing house, and if you can see, we've not really changed that much. We've made it more like an open linear wall. We maintain the split level here, and we have a vertical extension through an air well that brings light into the middle of the house. It's a view from the other side, and you can see quite clearly the living and the garden is extension of the space. The airwell with the bedrooms at the first floor. Kitchen area, and quite similar to 𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 house, there's a landscape area at the back with a louvered window, so that you, from the back lane, you can actually open up a little bit for some ventilation and privacy at the same time. And you walk up towards a series of staircases, and if you can see the split, almost like the split level from the offset position of the windows, this kind of things makes me very excited. I don't know why. It almost tells about the history of the actual originality of the space. The view from the windows to windows. And as you can see from here, we've also designed a loft area at the top, and the space almost becomes like a triple volume from ground first and the loft study area. We take a series of staircases on the side to come up to the study loft area, skylight beyond. From this study area, you take another series of staircases to go up to the rooftop deck. This is very ideal for the clients, because the clients are very active people. They like the sun a lot, so we provided also a dipping pool for them, which they use very often. Now, as you can see, they have a magnificent skyline view of KLCC and the KL Tower here. And this is a drone shot from above showing just the different spaces, and you can see for yourself that the spaces are quite evident. So from the house below is where the original house is, original size of the house, and how it's been extended with the rooftop deck with full picnic pool. Another shot. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to the last project, which is the Viewbot House. The Viewbot House is originally a semi-detached house that sits on a corner. And the one thing I noticed about the Viewbot House, the original plan, it's quite a large plan. It has a large floor plate to it, almost like quite fat, you would say. And so maybe the challenge was to how to get light and ventilation to the middle portions of the house. So we decided to employ bricks, you would say. If you notice, we've inserted this from this floor plan, we've inserted a pavilion that sits in parallel to the skewed boundary. But in doing that, you create sort of like a natural triangulated break in between the original house and here. And we've also detached the kitchen from the original house to create a corridor, a continuous corridor that is continuous when it's opened up, to bring in light and ventilation into the space, and also other corridors that also gives light and ventilation to the actual space. The first floor plan, which has most of the bedrooms in their original position, and the inserted pavilion, which has the study room and the balcony on the first floor. And that's the plan from above, with the triangulated deck and the building in parallel to the boundary line. Continuous corridor that leads right to the back, and the triangulated break. So the triangulated break gives layers of spaces. In hindsight, maybe I was inspired by my travels to the Mulu Caves, which is an extraordinary cave in Sarawak. I've been to it. And it's a 100-meter cave, natural limestone cave. And fascinated not only by its grandiosity, but if you look closely, it's almost as though the elements of architecture, the elements of usual architecture, which is floor, wall, and ceiling, they almost like become indistinguishable. It means they almost become like the same. Like if you would flip this image around and around and around again, you probably can't tell where is the floor and where is the ceiling and where's the walls. And this kind of concept intrigued me to come up with this vaulted arch shape, because so if you can see from here, the wall almost becomes like the ceiling and then comes back down again as the wall. This gives a very, this extends the space of the pavilion to in a way. The most challenging part about the architecture was the actual construction of it. And yes, we did do a single cast. And that's the results of that method, construction method. The pavilion is made out of a series of platforms. If you can see from here, one platform is higher than the other, and the balcony platform, and below balcony platform is the living room, and below the study platform is the dining room. And this difference of levels is in section gives a different spatial definition or different spatial hierarchy to the actual space itself. It also gives some form of a vantage view among each other to elongate the space more. And so it's quite evident from here, from the front of the house, looking back with the balcony at the top and the lower platform here. At the end of the pavilion, on the living side, I've designed two large doors, and these doors actually open up and extend the space towards the garden. These large timber doors are made out of pine. We chose pine not only because of its lightweight, but also because it lends a very interesting texture to it, and we stained it black. So when you see from an angle, you can see the actual grains and the texture of the grain is very interesting. Also, the handle of the actual door becomes kind of like a locking mechanism for the actual door to stay in place or to lock it when you close the door. The view of from the outside inside, and with the inverted arch window above. And you can see from here, that's the mini triangulated space. This triangulated space is quite interesting because you would have almost like a grill on the outside here. So most of the time when they're at home, also they will just open this sliding door, and they don't need to open this set of sliding doors so that they can still feel secure at night, or sometimes when somebody is home alone. Another picture of the spaces. We'll take some steps to go up to the study area. And the study area has this inverted arch window, or my client would like to say it's the smiley window because it looks like the smiley emoji. But there is a very strong intention behind the smiley window, as you can see from this image. This was the image that we envisioned, that the smiley window has a relationship with the upright arch that's a head, so that it's almost like to form a sense of continuity. So in this case, like if you can imagine a sort of like an imaginary S shape to the space. From the balcony above, you would, if you want to access to the balcony above, you will have to take a series of steps that leads up to the balcony space. There's also a very funny joke about this. Is client was up here once and he was having a cigarette. He was just chilling at the side on a chair, and then I think he got a call from his neighbor, and his neighbor said, "Don't do it, just don't do it." Okay. So this is the picture from the inside. At the evening nights, glowing. This particular image has got quite some interesting online comments. They always related this picture like though it's from a scary movie, and one of the scary movies is the Parasite movie. But I take that as a compliment. This is the glowingness of the arch at night. So, of course, after this COVID-19 situation, and even as I talk to you now, we are very influenced by or heavily addicted to the social technology already. I mean, if you look at the concept, the holy trinity of the three C's of how it's cheap, and you have a lot of choices, and also the last and most important is convenience. Somehow this has also affected the way we make our decisions about architectural design. It's almost like if you have a beginning and you have an end, there's a lot of missing parts in the middle. In a way, this relates to one of the conversations that sometimes I have with my students. Sometimes I do create, and we have conversations with students, and there's this paraphrasing that's very common that goes like, you gotta think outside the box, But sometimes I feel that sometimes I do question them and ask them, do you know how the box looks like? Can you even smell the box? Do you even feel the box? Probably the last question is, do you even know where the box is? Sometimes we don't even know where the box is. So we like to play with the box in a way, in the essence of we like to employ a certain sense of restraint to the design, because we think sometimes analysis by paralysis is not a good thing. Choices may not be a very good thing to architecture, and we try to keep that so that we are involved in the middle parts of things, and those middle parts of things are the most interesting parts in architecture, I believe. So moving forward, I apologize for not being there physically, but we have very exciting projects for you, and hopefully one day I will be able to present them to you physically, hopefully in the next future. And my ending is just a little poem. While you look down, pause, breathe, reflect, and savor those fleeting moments. Thank you.